Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing a fossil deck profile. So I'm really excited for you guys because this deck is an awesome deck that has an incredible fusion spell in it, Fossil Fusion, that lets us use materials from either player's graveyard to fusion summon into all of our insanely powerful boss monsters. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can come part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name description in a single video, getting a signed card sent in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron, along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Flint. Flint is a really good card in the deck because it has the effect that if this card is special summoned, you can discard a card, and if you do, you get to send a Fossil Fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard. And you can also send this card from your field to the graveyard to inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent. Then if Fossil Fusion's in the graveyard, you can return to your graveyard one of your banished cards that is Fossil Fusion or mentions it, which is a really good effect to be able to recover some cards back into the graveyard so you can use them as fusion materials again. We then play 3 copies of Withering Soldier. Withering Soldier is a great searcher for the deck because it has the ability that if this card is destroyed by battle or sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can add a Fossil Fusion or one card that specifically mentions it in its text from your deck to your hand, which is a really good effect. We then play just a single copy of Shell Knight. Shell Knight is a really good one-of in the deck because it has the ability that when this card is normal summon, you change it into defense position, and if you do, inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent. And if this card is destroyed by battle or sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can add one level 8 rock monster from your deck to your hand, or if Fossil Fusion's in the graveyard, you can special summon it instead, which is a really awesome effect. But for the rest of the turn, you cannot activate cards or effects with the same name as that card, which is not that big of a deal because you're basically just getting a monster on your side of the field with this card's effect. And the card we're usually going to be summoning off this card's effect is going to be our 2 copies of Gaia Plate, the Earth Giant. This card is a crazy boss monster that has the ability that you can special summon this card by banishing any 2 rock monsters from your graveyard, and then during the standby phase you have to banish a rock monster in your graveyard or send this card to the graveyard, and you half the attack and defense of any monster that battles with this card, which is a really insane effect because this card comes out at 2800. We then play for the Adamantimators. We're playing 3 copies of Analyzer. Analyzer is really good because it's basically like a cyber dragon that if only your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, and then all of your Adamantimators share the exact same effect that during your main phase, you can excavate the top 5 cards of your deck, and if you do, you get to special summon one level 4 lower non-tuner rock monster, and then place the rest on the bottom of the deck in any order, which is a really good effect to just start getting out cards like your Withering Soldier, or even use it with Flint to be able to use that insane effect. We then play 3 copies of Adamantipator Researcher. Adamantipator Researcher is a really good card in the deck as well because it has the ability, if you control a rock monster, you can special summon this card in your hand, and then it shares that same excavation effect like your copy of Analyzer. We then play 3 copies of Adamantipator Seeker. Adamantipator Seeker is a really good card because if you control an Adamantipator monster, you can special summon this card in your hand, which is an incredible effect. We then play just a single copy of Dragite. Dragite is a good one-of in the deck because it basically gets you a water monster in the graveyard to set up for your plays with your Dragite in the extra deck. We then play 3 copies of Rock Band. Rock Band is a good card in the deck because if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target a rock monster in your graveyard, except another copy of this card, and add it to your hand, and then place one card from your hand on the top of your deck. And if this card is banished from the field or graveyard, you can send a rock monster from your deck to the graveyard, further setting up your plays in the graveyard for Fossil Fusion. We then play a single copy of Plague Spreader. Plague Spreader is a really good card in the deck because this card is a great tuner monster to summon off your copies of your Needle Fiber. But this card is a really good one-of because you just place a card from your hand on the top of the deck, and then you get to special summon from this card from your graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field, letting you go in for more synchro plays and link plays, which is really nice. We then play 3 copies of Nibiru. Nibiru is an insanely powerful hand trap, but really good in this deck because it's a rock monster and helps you go in for the OTK with this deck. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Time Stream. Time Stream is a really good card in this deck, and it's just really an awesome card in general because it lets you target a Fossil Fusion monster that you control and tribute it, and if you do, you get to special summon a Fossil Fusion monster from your X deck whose original level is 2 levels higher than the monster that you tributed, which is a really good effect because it lets you fusion climb without even fusion summoning, which is a really awesome effect. It also has the ability that during your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card and a fossil fusion monster from your grave, and then target a fossil fusion monster in your grave and special summon it back to the field, which is a really good effect. We then play 3 copies of Fossil Fusion. This card is an incredible card that has the ability that you get to fusion summon a Fossil Fusion monster from your extract by banishing fusion materials listed on it from any graveyard, except materials with the specific graveyard requirements listed on it, because some of them require you to specifically banish cards from your opponent's graveyard or your graveyard. It also has the ability, if you banished monsters from both players' graveyard, neither player can target that special summon monster with monster effects, and if a face-up Fossil Fusion monsters you control is destroyed by battle or by card effect while this card's in the graveyard, you can add this card from your graveyard to your hand, which is a really good effect because then you can just fusion summon another card by using that card that was sent to your graveyard as a material, which is awesome. We then play 3 copies of Miracle Rupture. Miracle Rupture is a really good card that's basically a foolish burial for the deck because it has the ability you can send a level 4 rock monster from your deck to the graveyard, and if Fossil Fusion's in the grave, you also get to draw a card, which is really good. We then play 3 copies of Adamancipator Sign, which is a monster reborn for our rock monsters. It lets us target a rock monster in the grave and special summon it in defense position. Then, if you special summon an Adamancipator monster by the effect, you can take a level 4 lower rock monster from your deck and place it on top of the deck, being able to pick the exact mill that you want to be able to reveal to summon to the field. We then play 3 copies of Regeki because we are playing an OTK deck, so this card is really good in the deck to be able to just completely board wipe the field along with those copies of Nibiru to make sure that you can go in for game. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of Fossil Machine Skull Convoy, which is a really interesting card. It has the ability that it takes a rock monster plus a level 7 or higher monster to fusion summon this card, and it must first be special summoned with Fossil Fusion. While you control this fusion summon card, all monsters your opponent controls lose attack equal to their original defense. And this card can make up to 3 attacks on monsters during each battle phase. And when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can inflict 1,000 points of damage to your opponent. That is a lot of damage that they're going to be taking along with that battle damage on this card. This card is a really good boss monster for the deck. We're then playing a single copy of Skull King. Skull King is still one of the best Fossil Fusion monsters to summon because it must be special summoned with Fossil Fusion, and it takes a level 7 or higher monster plus a rock monster to summon this card. It can make 2 attacks during each battle phase, and if this card attacks a defense position monster, it inflicts piercing damage. Then during your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can target a monster in your opponent's graveyard and discard a card, and if you do, special summon that monster to your field, which is an insane effect. We then play a single copy of the Fossil Dragon. This card is a really good card, but it does require a level 7 or higher monster in your opponent's graveyard to summon, which is the only downside to this card. It has the ability it must first be special summoned with Fossil Fusion, and before damage calculation, if this card battles an opponent's monster, you can switch the current attack and defense of that opponent's monster until the end of the damage step. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing damage, and if this card is fusion summoned card battles an opponent's monster, any battle damage inflicted to your opponent is doubled, which is an insane effect that it just does double piercing damage. Then play a single copy of Fossil Machine Skull Wagon. Skull Wagon is a good one of as well in the deck because we finally have another level 6 Fossil Fusion monster to go in for more plays besides Skull Knight. But this card has the ability it must be fusion summoned by Fossil Fusion, and this card can make up to 2 attacks on monsters during each battle phase. And when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can inflict 800 points of damage to your opponent, and you can manage this card from your graveyard and target a spell or trap on the field and destroy it, which is a really good effect. Then play a single copy of Skull Knight. Skull Knight is a really good card to summon in the deck because it has the ability, if this card attacks a defense position monster, you inflict piercing damage, and when this card attacking card destroys a monster by battle, you can activate this effect that this card can make a second attack in a row. And you can banish this card from the graveyard and then target a monster on the field and destroy it, which is really good, especially if you use Time Stream to upgrade this card into our copy of our Skull King, because then you just banish this card from the graveyard and pop a monster, which is really, really good. We then play a single copy of Skull Buggy. Skull Buggy is really cool. It's actually one of my favorite cards in the deck, and has the ability that this card must be fusion summoned with Fossil Fusion, and when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can inflict 600 points of damage to your opponent. You manage this card from the graveyard and then add 1 monster from your deck to your hand that mentions a Fossil Fusion, which is really cool that this card is a searcher when it's in the grave. We then play a single copy of Skullbone. Skullbone is the one that you're going to be usually summoning in the deck because it is a 2000 attack point monster that just requires monsters in your graveyard, which is a rock and a level 4 or lower monster. And it must first be fused and summoned with Fossil Fusion, and this card can make up to 2 attacks on monsters during each battle phase. And you can banish this card from the graveyard and then add a time stream from your deck to your hand. We then play a single copy of Fossil Dragon Skullgar. Skullgar is a good 1-of in the deck as well, but it does require a monster in your opponent's graveyard that's a level 4 monster, level 4 or lower monster to summon into this card. But it's a 2500 attack point monster that has the ability that it does piercing damage, and you can manage this card from the grave to add a Fossil Fusion from your deck to your hand, which is really good to be able to climb into other cards. Then for the Synchro monsters, we're playing a single copy of Naturia Beast because this card is a really good 1-of in the deck that can basically stop all spell effects that your opponent's going to be activating. 1 copy of Raptite, because Raptite is a really good card in the deck that has the ability that during the main phase you can excavate the top 5 of your deck, and if you do, you get to special summon 1 excavated rock monster in defense position. Also, you place the rest on the bottom of the deck in any order, just like all of your other Adamancipator cards. The key thing about this card is it can actually summon tuners, unlike the ones in the main deck. We then play a single copy of Dragite, because Dragite is just an incredible boss monster in every rock deck, and it's just a really good card because when you have your water monster that's in the main deck into the graveyard, you can actually use the effect to negate spells and traps, which is really cool. We then play a single copy of Baron de Fleur. Baron de Fleur is a good card in the deck because it's super easy to make, and it's just a really good card in the deck. If you want to drop this card to have a more budget option, you can play another copy of Skull King in this particular build. We then play a single copy of Galliant Granite. Galliant Granite is really good because it can search any rock monster by detaching a material. 1 copy of Needle Fiber because it's super easy to make in the deck, and then you can summon Plague Spreader to your side of the field to go in for all of your really crazy plays. And for the last monster, we're playing a single copy of Appaloosa because it can get really big and be monster negates on the field. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to be able to play. If you guys have never played Fossil before, you definitely should because it's just a really fun fusion deck. It kind of reminds me of Invoked a little bit, which is kind of neat, but this deck is just super fun to be able to play. If you guys have never played it, I highly recommend it. So anyways, guys, that's it for this one. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can come part of our notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.